got my pin on.
Oh yeah, look at, she has the pin. It's a famous.
Oh, I love
pin.
it. Oh, thank, that's
It's like circulating Florida.
I told you, you got to get a nice new bag, and I was up in Tallahassee.
As he handed them,
I
that's
got to hand them
awesome.
out to all the right people.
We're all good.
All right,
Alrighty.
great.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another great Green Room episode this morning.
71 episodes I saw.
It's incredible.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Time flies.
And we have a great guest this morning, Josephine Creel, who we'll introduce in a second. And Josephine, listen, we always do a little political talk, and of course, that's always going on in Florida.
Always.
Before we get into our, so feel free to join in, you know. And
yeah,
listen,
we always chime in.
Well, for sure. Listen, former state senator Tadeo, who ran, I guess, as lieutenant governor under Charlie Crist last time or something. So she has some history. She's announced that she's entering the gubernatorial race on the Democratic side, which is interesting.
It is interesting.
Carlos Guillermo Smith gave me a heads up on that, actually.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was surprised because it's a little bit late in the game already. I mean, you think Nikki and Charlie have been out for a while now, so it's going to be
and reasons given were monetary. I guess the fundraising for Charlie and for Nikki is somewhere in the $3 million range.
Yeah, so for her to catch up,
Governor DeSantis has like 50 some million in the can. Yeah, Don. I love Don from the background there. Hey, listen, we got Don as our producer back, which is great too.
Yes, we have him back. It's so exciting.
I know. And then I heard the Surgeon General also chime in on Twitter. I saw at a news conference.
The one for Florida, the new one?
Yeah, he talked about that we're going to follow what the science tells us. And then he said that
he goes off on no science. Oh, sorry.
And then he literally said that there's no science that supports masking in schools and we're no mask mandates. So it was pretty disappointing. So we continue to slog through the
That's a good
here.
It's like slogging
I know.
through this.
And I want to make one other comment on the national level. You know, there's political talk, of course, about cannabis and everything, but everything is so buried right now in the lunacy of, and I'm going to call it out for how I see it. The Republicans not even willing to allow a debate about voting rights, with a bill that, you know, Senator Manchin tried to tailor to get some Republican support, gave it time to kind of sink in and everything. So I think we have to call it for what we see. They want a limited number of voters.
They do.
And
it's voter suppression.
Disappointing.
It's very disappointing. It's
but not even to allow debate and the whole filibuster thing, which I've never understood. And let's get Josephine involved, because I think you would be one, Josephine, if you were up in the Senate, that you would literally take 48 hours on the Senate floor to filibuster for your view. Because listen, that's what the filibuster used to be to me when we all grew up, right? Mr. Smith went to Washington, and if you feel passionately about cannabis, which we know that you do, Josephine, because I'm going to introduce you in a second, you would stand on that floor for 48 hours to support what you wanted. That's what's terrible about the filibuster today. They pick up the phone, they say it's a filibuster, and it's done. These Mitch McConnell should have to stand there, sweat, get hypoglycemic, Seriously, he'll slip some CBD in sublingually or something, I don't know. Anyway, listen, we're really happy to have Josephine Creel here with us in the green room today.
Yes, and she's going to be a local Sarasotan for us, and we have such an asset here now. I'm so excited.
You know, it's interesting because you met Josephine a lot later than I, but she's been into the office before, but we've never had you in the green room, right, Josephine, somehow?
No, this is my first green room, so thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Listen, it's great to have you, and I'll leave some things out, but how I want to introduce you is somebody who really was integral when I came into the Florida cannabis space, as somebody who had immediate knowledge of not only the state itself, living up near Tallahassee and being a part of all the lobbying efforts, but really focused on what her expertise is. She's a licensed social worker and has worked within the elder community for years. And I know it, as a caregiver, of course. So, you know, Ruta, and I got to pause one moment in your introduction, Josephine, because, you know, you served as a caregiver, of course, Ruta, for your mom for a number of years from a little bit different angle, not in the cannabis space. But those who care for others,
it's stressful. It's a lot of work. You sacrifice a lot.
And I always made it a point.
It are exhausted.
And I was made it a
frankly.
point when I was an ER doctor to look at the caregiver who was in the room with the patient and thank that caregiver for what they did. But anyway, Josephine has been around forever and welcome Patty and myself into the space early, taught me a lot about Florida itself, and also have learned a lot about what she does on the medical social work side for her clients and patients, of course, but also how you fought to get cannabis involved into that space as well. So I've queued it up for you.
Still fighting.
Oh, well, of course. Listen, we're both, I think, half glass full people, and we know where we've come from where we started. So even though there's tons of work to do, and we'll talk about it today, of course, what's going on up in Tallahassee on the caregiver side and things like that. But, just to that extent. So just starting off, Josephine, tell us some of the things that you've seen here in Florida, starting out from the get-go and how difficult it's been to bring cannabis into the space in our elder care world and in our caregiver world.
Well, I did come onto the scene later than some, earlier than most. I'm going on a decade now of my cannabis legislative advocacy work. The first few years, I'm going on a decade in where I'll publicly speak out. Let me put it that way. Because for a long time, I was pretty concerned about what my colleagues would think about me. So it kept me in the shadows. But when we first started walking the halls up in Tallahassee, 2011, 2012, there really were just a handful of us. That's where I connected through my husband, Mike, with the Florida Cannabis Action Network. And there were just a few of us walking those halls, and it was a hot topic back then, but it was very much in secret.
Is there a personal story, Josephine, that got you involved?
What got you involved?
Or Michael, how did you guys get involved early?
So my dad, I was working as a hospice medical social worker. And while I was working in hospice, helping families and patients navigate through the dying process, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. That diagnosis came probably like around 2006. We went the traditional medical route. He had the upper right lobe of his lung removed. He then underwent chemotherapy. Then he underwent radiation. And after he was given a prognosis of 3 months to live, his radiation oncologist recommended another round of chemotherapy. And I was just like, what are we doing? What are we doing to our patients? So I tried, of course, back then we had no cannabis program. Everyone in the state, with the exception of, Kathy Jordan and Irv Rosenfeld and Elvie, who are the IND patients. Outside of those 3 people, everyone who used cannabis in Florida was doing so as a criminal.
Of course, right.
So I started looking for alternatives to traditional medications for my dad. And that's when clinical cannabis came on my radar. Through Florida Can, I connected with Patients Out of Time. And I started learning from really this world's experts on clinical cannabis, Dr. Ethan Rousseau, Dr. Dustin Sulak. And I started learning that cannabis can really benefit our people. So I attended some clinical cannabis conferences. It was all very medicinal, very science oriented.
Sure, and those were the leaders then, and they are still now. The people that you mentioned and Patients Out of Time. And listen, we all can't wait for COVID to be over, so we can get those conferences back roaring, although via Zoom. So did your dad ever have access to cannabis at that point, Josephine? And he passed a course.
And as a social worker, I really struggled. I really honor patients making informed decisions and honoring their choice, even, sometimes to make bad choices. But I really struggled because at that point I was like, well, should I just sneak it into his food? Should I just,
Listen, it was an entirely different world back then. And the good news is, is that it's changed.
Yeah.
It's not where we want it, but it's surely better.
As a worker, I decided to honor his decision. So I was in hand, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different pharmaceutical drugs that I could pump him full of, which I took control because my parents are both from Sicily, and my mom, her education level is not very high, and she's very emotional. And I was like, if I give her all these drugs, she's going to kill him by accident, by giving him the wrong dose of morphine.
Oh, it is pretty scary when you get into that end of life care time.
I took them through the process as best as possible. I'm also trained in guided imagery and meditation and breathing and mindfulness, so I really focused mostly on those, but I had big pharma behind me to help get him through his symptoms. Sadly, he died. He would not become a criminal, even though I was ready to be a criminal. And
it was the criminality. It's so interesting. We still hear that. 100%. And it's one of the big three, as you know, Ruta, that I say to patients: feel the best you can in the most safe, natural way you can, and to be legal in doing so. I mean, and it's so sad that it has to be the last arrow out of the quiver of healthcare, which is why what we do every day. It's so interesting, Josephine. So you're on this morning because we're queuing up and making sure that I'm ready for our big noon event, because FAMU, our $10 out of our $75 fee to the state goes to FAMU, MIRI, it's called the educational effort. And listen, they've had others on. I'm thrilled to be asked. And listen, as far as the caregiver side of things, it's not overly complicated in Florida, but it's not the easiest process either.
They made it very pricey. They made it,
no doubt. There's a $75 card involved. There's a test involved, so right.
Not only that, but my biggest issue with the Caregiver Clause, as it's written in statute, is, I work in and have for decades with our elders in and out of nursing homes, assisted living, independent living, and these folks, much like my dad, have 11, 12, 13 different combinations of meds that they're taking, sometimes 3 and 4 different meds for anxiety alone, and then they call me in as behavioral health because they're exhibiting impulsivity and, all of these behaviors. But the way our program, as specifically the caregiver part of the stipulation is written, is that if a patient can't self-administer the medication, they have to designate a caregiver. Well, we also know, and we hold a patent, on cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. And in that patent, it says that it can be specifically helpful for issues of the brain, like Alzheimer's disease.
Listen, it's a scandal that we're still fighting to get it in.
Yeah, our end-stage dementia patients who cannot administer the medication themselves, in order to have cannabis as medicine, and then just being allowed in the facilities, that's a whole different conversation.
But
the point is, everything has changed to the point that now it could be as easy as a nurse putting a patch on every 3rd day or something like that. And
and the nurses are not allowed to administer the medication. So
of course,
even though they can give them, opioids and oxys and benzos and all of these other far more, heavier drugs with terrible side effects.
No doubt. And that's something that's worthy of fighting for to change.
Hopeless people, those with dementia, really, they've been written out of our program because they don't have somebody, it's not realistic to expect a son or a daughter of a chronically, critically, terminally ill patient to come into a facility 3, 4, 5 times a day to administer.
No, that's nonsense. And listen, unfortunately, and as we add qualifying conditions, as we go forward, and I've seen advances of bills, I still don't see Alzheimer's included as one of the qualifying conditions, or autism, unfortunately. So once again, there's a lot of work to do. But to me, and I'm going to bring it up on the this afternoon, and I'm everybody got to you don't have to register for it. It's on Facebook, but if you want to, it's easy to find. And join us. It's going to be fun. And it goes all over the state. We go all over the country.
Yeah,
But anyway, but the point is I'm going to make is that it's as easy as just including an institutional caregiver status clause, in a bill. It's not complicated. Just allow an institution to be able to.
It's so simple.
It is. And they make such a mountain out of it.
We don't need anything. We just need to expand the definition of caregiver to include institutions. Once the facility is deemed as the caregiver, then the employee in the facility can administer the meds along with the other meds. That's, part of my issue with our entire program, and we have come so far, and I stop and I remind myself, used to be everyone was a criminal. Now we have over 600,000 registered patients. That is something definitely for us to applaud. But the way that we've got it set up right now, it just really needs to be expanded. It is a clear-cut case of medical discrimination to me. Discrimination is when you treat one class of people differently than when you treat another class of people. So if we are holding up access to this state legal medical treatment option, that is discrimination. It's a discriminatory practice. And that is what I always focus on when I'm up there. We are discriminating against people who choose a more natural, softer, gentler approach to symptom control and disease management. And that can't stand as it is. It just can't. We need to push that needle forward.
Can I ask what, on a personal, opinion note, why do you think it is that it's so difficult to add that clause in? Why do you think legislators have such difficulty with it?
I think it all stems back to the Schedule I status at the federal level. Everybody's so afraid. Even the nursing homes themselves, the facilities, there has not been one facility across this entire country. And we do have some in other parts of the state that are allowing cannabis to be used. And we actually have some assisted living facilities right here in Sarasota that I've worked with to rewrite their policies and procedures to allow for use in their community. But again, it's just for those patients who have all their faculties and they have to keep the medication with them, can't be kept with the others.
Oh, so we know. We've worked directly with the assisted living areas down here on a few patients. It's unbelievably tough.
We're definitely making progress. But even though the federal government has never come down on one elder care facility, that fear keeps them from allowing the use. And, I can't blame them, rightfully so. If they are operating with Medicare dollars and it means, allow patients to use this and potentially lose your status, or just prohibit it and keep operating as you are. I get it, but we're not serving the most vulnerable among us. And it's up to us to protect and serve. Especially as healthcare professionals, especially as professional advocates, which, social workers are, I'm always amazed. I'm like, why am I the only one up here Why am I the only one standing before these legislators and saying we are discriminating against the most vulnerable among us?
It would be nice to have some kind of a coalition, because when we speak individually to people who are in nursing homes, like the administrators or assisted living facilities, they're like on a one-to-one level, they're like, oh my God, we wish we had it. We want it.
Absolutely.
But yet they don't come as a united front and go up and say, like, as you know, if you had the power of 100 ALFs and, you know, nursing homes coming up and they all are saying that our patients need this, our elderly, our parents, our grandparents need it, it would make a huge statement. And I think it would speak volumes. But you're right, they're all afraid and they're in the shadows still.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's so frustrating that it does have to be taken care of at the federal level. And, you know, once again, it's rare that we get through a green room where we don't make this point. We can't allow the compromise at the federal level to be a rescheduling into 2 or 3. That would give it back to pharma. It would be a complete disaster in so many ways. It would not decriminalize the plant and in and of itself. So we need to always hold out for the full descheduling and decriminalization, right? I mean, that's the only thing that's going to be appropriate. But it is money, it is funding. You'll always hear that from the nursing homes and the assisted living when we want to do research on our elderly patients, you know. But I don't know, to me, even simple things like this. So I had to read through the rules, you know, getting ready for the Caregiver, you know, show and everything, because listen, I have the greatest staff in the world. As you know, we're going to have Donna on to discuss the logistics of what the patients and families have to do because it's intricate. Sometimes almost always you can only, of course, have one caregiver, but sometimes in rare circumstances you can have 2. But here's the point I want to make. Doctors aren't allowed to be a caregiver, right? So a simple,
there's even a better one, which gets totally ignored, but is written into statute. No medical marijuana treatment center employee. If you work at a dispensary, according to state law, you're prohibited from serving as a caregiver. So
yeah, I saw that one. I saw that one too. So it's simple solutions like a doctor having a facility type of, you know, license to be able to dispense to his patients, you know, at a nursing home or something like that. Or maybe even the MMTCs could get creative and have one of their employees that needs, but they can't. But
they're even more prohibited than anyone.
Isn't that right? I have in front of me. So let's talk about caregivers from the get-go, because people forget that in Florida, we talk what we talk. But if you're from Maine or Michigan, the whole caregiver program, California, of course, started with people literally growing the cannabis for you. And if we really look at it from the roots of medical care, that's a great thing. They can grow the specific cultivar that you want in the specific way that you want, and you have a guarantee of that, cost effectiveness wise. Absolutely. So a caregiver,
pesticide free.
Absolutely.
That's the other thing.
Or how it's flushed, or how it's so to me, it's critical that we always understand that we're still talking about a caregiver program over here, so to speak, but the basis of a cannabis caregiver program is that, and that's why you'll see this, that in certain states you're allowed to have, you know, a certain number of patients if you're a caregiver, you know, right? So
who's the most generous?
Believe it or not, what did I find? Oh, no limited, Oklahoma, no limit mentioned Oregon.
Maine has a pretty beautiful program. Maine has a lovely cannabis.
Right. So Dustin Sulak and I have spoken to it often. They don't have dispensaries up there as much as they have a caregiver program where you kind of register for somebody that grows your plants for you. And listen, I think as we go forward, if we do get a home grow option here in Florida, I think that's a great means of a coach, so to speak, somebody that can both help you grow your own plants at home and teach you all the intricacies of the endocannabinoid system, how it can help you and work with you, even a little bit more advanced than what we can do, you know, here in the office setting. But and the caregiver also
consistency of product, you know.
Yes,
absolutely, the consistency of product.
Even at the MMTC level,
it's people people will find something that works for them,
Yep.
Yeah.
and then they go back in and it's no longer available.
That's the #1 complaint from patients.
And besides price, but it is,
Besides price,
but price is price. But
No,
yes, the
price is price, but
consistency and
consistency.
availability of product is by
availability.
far and away,
Mhm.
but on the other hand, it can be as simple as, and not to call on any specific, MMTC, but sometimes you buy a product from an MMTC and I can't open the top of it, no matter how hard I push down or how hard I twist.
Childproof.
So caregiver
Again,
status can be as simple.
That's a function of how the statute is written, because all of those packaging rules, they're all written into the statute and into the Department of Health rules. So,
Sure.
We can complain to the MMTCs, but they also have a certain set of guidelines that they have.
I understand.
And
My point is that it could be as simple as opening up the package for, if you're a caregiver for somebody, or the crumbling up of the cannabis and the rolling of a joint. Listen, I can't roll a joint for the life of me, but my wife is the best joint roller in the world.
So this is another issue that I've come across with patients. It's holiday time. Family gathers for Thanksgiving. Mom and dad bring grandma over to their kids' house. We have a beautiful Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody goes home. Uh-oh, we forgot grandma's meds at Johnny's house. Well, guess what? If Johnny puts the meds in his car and drives them back to grandma's house and he gets pulled over by a law enforcement officer, there is a potential that Johnny's going to get arrested for bringing grandma's medicine back home. I mean, all of these little intricacies that I think, and that's another thing that I have talked a lot about up at the legislature, is the difference between theory and practice. Lawmakers are making these laws and they're coming from cannabis is a dangerous drug of abuse that we have to protect people from, instead of cannabis is a therapeutic agent that can help people. And then they put these little stipulations into law, which sounds so great. Let's pat ourselves on the back. And then when you get to the practical level, Johnny can't even bring grandma her medicine back home.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Yeah, for sure. But once again, as it is,
listening to the wrong people also. Here you guys get 30 seconds on the floor. Meanwhile, somebody who has no clue gets up there and spouts for an hour and a half about nothingness or the dangers of whatever. And they're not the ones with the boots on the ground or the experience or working with the elderly or working with patients daily. So it's kind of a messed up system. And I don't know when it's ever going to change. I doubt it.
Well, I think change will come with the consistency of effort and pressure and passion, that people bring to it. We see changes. I know, Josephine, you saw, you were in Tallahassee. It seems like 8 weeks ago, but I know it's just a week ago or whatever it was. Yeah, COVID is a crazy time warp. But, listen, it is changing up there. The doors are more open to us. People are starting to listen. I think that has to do with just a new generation of leaders coming in. Once again, Representative Buchanan coming into our office a couple weeks ago. I'm appreciative of the information, education, and knowledge. So we're just going to continue to kind of hammer away, as we do. But it's been great having you in the green room. As usual, here it is coming up on 9 o'clock, and we can literally talk, about so many other things.
I know there's a lot of people listening, tuning in today that have no idea what a caregiver does, how they go about getting their caregiver permission card and things. So maybe you guys can touch on that briefly before we go off, because I know a lot of people tune in just because they've never.
So I wanted to get the nuts and the bolts in before get the nuts and bolts in.
So it's very much like a patient who applies for the medical cannabis program. A caregiver needs to be designated through the state. So there's a caregiver application that needs to be filled out. Officially in statute, it says that there's a course that they'll need to take. That course has never been developed or approved. So
hang on. I asked my guys yesterday about it specifically, and the course does exist. It's about a 10 question true and false test that my guys, and big shout out to Tiffany in the front, Donna, they go through the test with the caregiver and they literally do it for them. It's online. So the test does exist, but basically it's all about the legality of where you get your cannabis. Don't buy it on the street. Who can carry it? Don't let Johnny carry it when Johnny, is not the caregiver, all that type of stuff. And I guess my point is, and it's easy to make because once again, nuts and bolts as it is, a good cannabis office, okay, will know these things and will help guide. But listen, in Florida,
there's a $75 fee also.
Yes, there's a $75 fee.
A $75 fee. Basically, it's either parent for child or child for parent. That doesn't mean you have to be a relative to be a caregiver, but there's a few extra steps that you have to go through. So listen, once again, the offices absolutely should assist in that. But once again, caregivers can be simple just from the means of the opening of a package and, or more importantly, in the autistic child, right? Or the Alzheimer's patient on either end of the spectrum. Of course, there needs to be an assistance in the administration of the ratios of THC and CBD, in the deciding of the delivery means, be it patch, tincture, right, inhalation technique. So that's the reason why an educated caregiver, okay, is always important. And one of the reasons, if you're going to have a test, Ruta, let's put a little bit into the test education wise, so that everybody knows. But then you're inhibiting patients, caregivers, if they're not educated by their doctor's office from getting it. So I got it. So I implore everybody, make sure you're getting that knowledge on your doctor visit, right? If you are the caregiver, to know how to do it right. The MMTCs can and will assist, right? But don't count on that as being your
because I mean,
or Facebook,
and it's really important for the caregivers because a lot of times if the parents are in a facility, they're not going to be going to the MMTCs necessarily. So the caregiver has to go. So they have to have knowledge of the products more than the person taking the thing. So, I mean, it's like really critical, in fact.
And nothing gets me crazier than reading a Facebook thread and, somebody asks a question and, this, that. Nobody mentions that it's the doctor office that really should be that first resource for questions, and as it is. But anyway, it's been great having you in. And so
welcome to Sarasota.
So do you want to tell us what you're going to be doing in Sarasota and what can we be looking for, forward to in the next, time for you?
Sure. So I'm going to be serving as a dual role. I've taken a social work contract position, and I will be serving as healthcare proxy or medical decision maker for incapacitated patients in hospitals and hospices that don't have family members to make medical decisions for themselves.
Kudos to you, Josephine. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always kind of when I embarked on my journey back in my early 20s. I really wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, and that's kind of what I view myself as, a voice for the voiceless. And this new position is really literally being the voice.
That's so honestly, I really for me, somebody that does something like that is just way up here because it's selfless. And I think that's amazing, really.
It's exciting and terrifying at the same time. And so that's how I know I should be doing it.
Yeah, but you should also be so grateful that these people are going to be so eternally grateful to you, because if they don't have family and they don't have anybody caring for them and they have somebody that's going to actually give them an ear, it's huge. And really great job.
Yeah, good luck. And listen, welcome to the Southwest Florida. You'll love it over here.
And offline we'll get together.
Look forward to it, Ruta.
Stay safe and healthy. Everybody be well.
Get vaccinated and see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.